Mm, 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 mm. Mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm, mm,
yeah.
mm. Mm, mm, mm,
I'm
mm.
supposed to be writing a song to that beat.
Are you
At some point, I'll
to
get
the
it done.
symphony beat?
Not to the this beat right here, the beat that
Oh, the beat.
starts us off.
How you writing the song to the theme song, bro?
I mean, cause it was supposed to be my beat, and I
Man,
took
you
it.
gave it to the cross examiners.
That don't mean I can't write a song
No,
to
you
it.
can, but it's just gonna feel different.
Will it?
It's gonna hit different.
Will it?
Man, while I was trying to hurry up and eat these Tic Tacs before the joint
Before
came on,
before 20 seconds was up.
before it was out, that's when you sucking on them real hard. You be real when
You
you
start
try.
sweating. You start sweating from a tic tac.
Listen, I am the Tic Tac expert. I love these joints, man. These are I don't know if y'all don't know about these.
Ooh, the rainbow joints.
These are Hawaiian Sophie. It's Pride Month. These are my this is it. This is my celebration of Pride Month right here.
Yo, you got me doing the wheeze laugh out here. you got me doing that joint. That's crazy.
Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, we don't celebrate Pride Month, but I do think it's ironic that
Yeah.
that's called Pride Month, right? Like the rainbow, God destroys mankind because of their pride.
Yeah.
Brings a rainbow to remind him that he's not going to do it again. But God doesn't need that reminder, right? He didn't put that rainbow there so that he could be reminded.
Nah,
He
so
put that
we could be
rainbow there for
reminded.
us to understand his commitment, his promise, right?
That's
And
right.
so it's just ironic to me that that's the rainbow, and then the pride is associated with the sexual immorality of the day.
Right.
And I just think it's just funny how God does that.
Yeah.
He just allows people to not even realize, like when you stand before the Lord, the very thing that He's judging is people's pride, and the thing that people are celebrating. So it's just fascinating to think about it. But we are here, ladies and gentlemen. We talk rap, we talk life, we talk social media, we talk Christ, we talk everything, and got proof. We're cross-examined, and you can't handle the truth, ladies and gentlemen.
Word up.
We are back to the grill again. The grill again. Back to the grill again. Too bad we can't have that song, the old third base joint.
We probably could. We just gotta get the.
We gotta pay them for it though. If we do it.
Exactly,
I ain't with
it.
I need reparations. I ain't paying nobody for that.
We had a good laugh about that earlier today.
We gonna have a good laugh about it again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, season 4, episode 25. Man, it's good to be back with y'all.
Yes,
this is another
yes.
double decker, and we ain't gonna take up your time all night because you know, the NBA playoffs.
Yeah.
Game 1 starts tonight, ladies and gentlemen,
That's
9
right.
p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
That's
we
right.
on the East Side. He's in PA. I'm in DC, Maryland, whatever. So we're gonna watch that game, and I'm looking forward to that, man. What you thinking, man? What's your honest? I need that Strike the Wolverine assessment.
Man, I'm a Jason Tatum fan, man. I really am. And I like Jaylen Brown too. So, I'm yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough to say, but I'm gonna say I'm rooting for the Celtics, and that hurts me a little bit to say that.
Yeah, and to explain why, because they might not know why that stings to say that.
Because I'm a Sixers fan, man.
Right.
I'm a diehard Sixers fan. Like you don't ever root for the Celtics,
right?
But I really like these young bulls on this team. This squad is good. That they got some veterans on there that are doing. Al Horford is having a crazy playoff.
Hey, bro, he seems like a
playoff
godly
time
dude, man. This dude does not do an interview without saying,
right.
I just want to give honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Right.
He makes sure that he communicates his faith.
And he's an Islander. You know what I'm saying? He's one of them. I think he's like Dominican Republic or something like that. I think he's Dominican.
Yeah. What up, though? I don't know who the Facebook user is. You gotta say what's up.
Yeah. What up, Facebook user? We got Buster.
Josh was good, baby. Josh is one of the OGs, the cross-examiner OGs.
Word up. But my son is a diehard Warriors fan. You know what I'm saying? Like you like to say, we like to see greatness. Good, baby. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and the Warriors right now are on the verge of Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, These dudes
Tough.
are on the verge
Jordan
of
Poole,
greatness.
young dude
Jordan
balling,
Poole is adding to the greatness.
adding to it.
But them three, I mean, they've been together doing it the whole time.
Uh-huh.
And here they go again. You know what I'm saying?
Have you been following the whole Kevin Durant conversation about him? Like, if they win this, that it kind of disproves his legacy with them and all of that.
I mean, I don't think you can disprove his legacy. You know,
Sure.
Kevin Durant is great. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's great in his zone and he got a title. Word up. Let him have that.
Yeah,
you know
let
what I'm
him have
saying?
it.
Like, but this is what they're doing now, and it just proves their whole organization that, like, to pull up another like a pool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or now Wiggins to revitalize his career, like the way that they have there. Like, he's balling. He's like their new KD. You know what I'm saying?
Wiggins is balling right now.
He's balling. So, yeah, man, I'm excited about this joint. I think if I was to say, honestly, I think I would probably go 4-3 Warriors. But it could even be 4-2 Warriors.
Yeah.
But I'm pulling for the Celtics. I think the Celtics could do it. I'm just trying to be realistic. If I was to give my realistic assessment, I think it'd probably be going Warriors by 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an exciting NBA Finals. We got a lot of young talent versus a little bit more seasoned veteran OGs. Even though it's young talent and OGs on both teams.
Both sides, yeah.
But, Steph and Clay, and they're a little bit older. They're in their 30s, early 30s. Right. Steph's about 34. Right. Draymond, I don't know where he's at. But, just some guys have been around. I think I like it. So you got Al Horford as a believer. I'm for the believers, right?
Right.
So I can go either way.
Steph
the
Curry.
Reason why,
Steph Curry's a believer.
He's a believer. Yeah, he's a believer. Yeah. Al Horford's a believer, right? So I can go either way in terms of the believers. Why I would want Al Horford to win it, but the Celtics, is because when I bang with Jason Tatum, that's a young dude. I like this dude's game.
Yeah, he's a baller.
Tough. NBA's in good hands, fam.
Oh yeah.
Like LeBron and the dudes, they can go ahead and roll out, and the NBA's in good hands.
Right. We're seeing that.
John Morant, these dudes in good hands, right?
Yeah, we seeing that.
So I think, but I would love it if the Celtics won, because Al Horford is probably the longest active player that's had. He's had, I think, 180 playoff games experience and never been to the finals.
Wow,
so
really?
It's his first time in the finals.
He still hasn't been to the finals?
Nope.
That's crazy. I would have never said that.
So I wouldn't mind seeing him get a ring his first. I wouldn't mind seeing Steph get a ring, and this is for selfish reasons. One, he's a believer, so I could go that way. But two, and then I'm sure people will debate this all in all, I think Steph has done more for the game than LeBron James. I think the contribution of Steph Curry to the NBA is greater than LeBron. LeBron was more of a phenom out of high school. I think LeBron was the last one to come out of high school, go straight from high school to the pros. 6'7", 235. I mean, he was a slasher. He was young. Him and Kobe Bryant, they kind of had that just, he's going to be great. He's got the body. He's got all of it.
I mean, yeah, right away they were talking about the rebirth of Magic Johnson.
100%. Right. He was kind of like a Magic, but not with point guard ability. But he could slash. He could all of it. So he was a phenom. He became the dude to watch. But when you talk about like who changed the game, I haven't seen anyone change the NBA since Jordan. Remember when Bama's wanted to beat Jordan? He had 6'6". People was like, "How tall are you? 6'5"? Oh man, you almost as tall as Jordan." I mean, it was like everybody wanted to be like.
You can't miss the AI era though. Don't do that to my guy.
Yeah, right. But AI was ridiculous. But I'm talking about changing the game. Like there had already been shorter point guards that could ball. I mean, you had Spud Webb at 5'7", not nearly as good as AI. But don't get me wrong, Iverson came from Georgetown. I could say a lot about. He's from my neck of the woods. I love Iverson. But in terms of like the game, changing the game, you had Jordan so Magic and Bird, they come in, change the game. Jordan comes in, changes it for a long time. Then you had Shaq come in and brings it back to like the big boy centers. But I'm talking about with Steph Curry, he changed the whole way you play the game. Like there were no LeBron rules. No Allen Iverson rule. You had the Jordan rule. You had to figure out, how do we guard this dude?
You
right?
can't say the crossover without AI
Oh
though.
yeah, but he wasn't the first crossover though. Tim Hardaway had the UTEP two
Yeah,
step
but
way before.
yeah, Hardaway's crossover was tough, but
It was
everybody
tough.
forgot about it after AI's.
But
It
listen,
just
you acting like I'm
disappeared.
beefing, like because I know AI, man. I'm from. I mean, before he was with y'all in Philly, he was
Yeah,
with me in Georgetown, fam.
no
Like you ain't
doubt.
got to. I see what you're doing, but that's not what we do. We talk about this. Steph Curry made everyone want to shoot threes, bro. Like this is incredible. Like he changed the
No doubt.
game
No doubt.
in ways that I've never seen. So
No doubt.
I think when it goes down in history, LeBron may be people's Mount Rushmore, but Steph Curry, I think, and when it's all said and done, especially if he wins 4 rings, same team, never, especially if he wins with this group without like adding another superstar. Crucial.
Yeah.
So because I want to see him get one more ring because of that, and then
Right.
but I wouldn't be mad if Boston won. Like I don't have any emotional stake in the game here. All right, are you a Stranger Things watcher, man? Do you watch Stranger Things?
Yeah. Yes.
So,
You don't watch that joint? You don't watch Stranger Things?
I do watch Stranger Things,
Okay. Okay.
right? So I grew up watching horror film, Fangoria, Nightmare on Elm Street, which was interesting
Right.
because he's in one of the dude Robert Englund's in is Victor Creel or whatever, right? So I grew up watching that stuff. So I like that concept. But there were times I'm like, I ain't watching no more. I want my kids to, they get scared about that stuff. But I have watched Stranger Things because it was a little bit more sci-fi, less horror, more sci-fi to me.
Right. It was.
But I would
It
say
was.
season 4.
Right. It's different.
This is a tough season, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like so I didn't think season 3 was that good. I thought season 3 was kind of dumb to me. I didn't like it that much. Season
I lost
4,
interest a little bit. Yeah, I think a lot of people did. I think a lot of people lost interest a little bit.
They were struggling in season 3, right?
Yeah.
But season 4, though, man,
It was crazy.
This season is tough, bro.
Yeah.
I'm only on episode 5.
Season 3
4.
did end kind of strong, though. I did like the
it
way
did,
it
yeah.
ended.
They came, killed her brother and all that. I get that, yeah. So I mean, it did end, but it dragged. It just dragged on to me. It was like, come on, man.
And this joint is way different, man. This joint is
way
like,
different.
I mean, from the gate, it's on some like, yo, be careful. The scenes could be real.
I mean, this is on some horror film, like you know,
Right.
like stuff that you'd watch, like The Conjuring. You know what I'm saying?
That's why I told wifey, because we watched it together, and she ain't into horror films at all. So I looked back at her. I was like, this is like a horror film. She goes, I know, this is kind of whack. But the storylines and everything is tough, though. It's still, it's still got there's some cheesiness to it. I think some of the graphics could have been a little bit better. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of how the dude looks.
Right. Yeah. He looks like Swamp Thing a little bit.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what I thought. Swamp Thing. I'm like, fam, you look like Swamp Thing. That's kind of corny to me.
Yeah, it is.
We grew up seeing Swamp Thing. So
Swamp Thing wasn't that bad. Yeah,
right. But aside from that, it's cool. They got the same characters. I appreciate that about it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so I haven't finished the first part 1, but I already saw that there's a trailer for part 2, the second half. They're doing it like the Ozarks. Ozark did the first 7 episodes, part 1, and then put part 2, the last 7. So so I got to finish it, but I'm enjoying it, bro. I'm enjoying.
Yeah, it's intense, man. It's intense.
It's intense, bro. So have you finished the first 7?
I did. We finished the first part.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I haven't finished it yet. I'm on episode 5, so I'll probably sometime maybe the next week or 2. I'm sure I'll finish it because I know tonight watching that ball.
Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into one of the things that we do is we like to apply that Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince when in summertime when he said taking a little break from the monotony from all that hardcore jam that has gotten to be a little bit. So we taking a break from the monotony of what's happening in the culture and all that stuff. A lot of podcasts.
Song,
huh?
I love that song.
That's on crank. That's one of his best songs. Summertime.
Man, every time it comes on, it feels like summertime.
Drums, please.
Yeah.
Man, I wish we could play music, man, but we'll get flagged.
So tough.
And not the American flag. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into GoFundMe, which all of us know GoFundMe is a crowdfunding site. It is the crowdfunding site. If I'm not mistaken, it was the first one. And normally the one that comes out first, if it's done even halfway decent, then
It
most
holds it
people will
down.
stick with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard for competition to come in unless you have some good angle or something like that. So GoFundMe is a crowdfunding app where you can give money to particular causes, and there are kind of three ways that they work. So GoFundMe works like this: either if you're donating to a charity, then that money can go directly to the charity. If you're or the money goes directly to the person who set up the account, or if they transfer the money to go to somewhere else, or they have this option where if you don't reach the goal that you're asking for, then like say if you're asking for 10 grand and you have 30 days and you only get 9,950, well, then they're going to give everyone back their money, right? So there are different ways to do this. GoFundMe has been a wonderful, in many ways, a wonderful contribution for all people, but particularly believers, to apply the "it's better to give than to receive" kind of principle.
Right.
Right. So that's the thing I've loved about it is when you give, you don't give back. Like you don't get back. You just give and you trust that it's being used. And so GoFundMe has been, and we're going to look at some of this, but there's also something about GoFundMe that is very concerning, or I would say more revealing. And we're going to talk about that on this show as we look at sort of the campaign. We're going to start with the campaign, look at some of the history, and then we're going to look at some of the most successful campaigns and some of the most outlandish ones. But then we're going to look at the other side of GoFundMe. And what I'm talking about, and you'll see, is that the actual outcome of GoFundMe in our culture and society. And I would say that by the end of this episode, you can agree to disagree if you want, but you'll see that at least from my perspective and Strack where he agrees that GoFundMe is actually a way to understand what's happening in the current cultural climate. I think GoFundMe as a crowdfunding application explains what's happening in America, at least. But I would say even in some parts of the world. All right, so we're going to get into GoFundMe and talk about this. And I appreciate y'all. If you have any questions or whatever, just feel free to put them in there. If they feel like they work with what we're doing, we'll talk about them. If they don't, we're going to keep the party going. All right, first, let's talk about GoFundMe, the campaign. Now, we talked a little bit about what it is. And anyone who's watching, listening, unless you've been on another planet or something, everyone pretty much knows what GoFundMe is. I don't know, would you say, Strack? I don't feel like it gets the same kind of publicity. Like no one's talking about GoFundMe because it's such a normal part of sort of society. Unless something
I
crazy
think
happens.
the only time it gets publicity is when I think
Scandal.
the amounts or
Right.
scandals, or if you know someone like somebody famous is, like recently we know of someone they raised a lot of money for.
Yeah, they raised a couple
And it was
million. Yeah.
right. So that's when or when
That
they
was
do
public though. I don't mind saying that. It was voted.
right.
They raised some people from the SBC. I think they raised maybe 2 million. It was a lot.
It was
For
close, if
Vody
not
with the
2
heart
million.
surgery and stuff that he was dealing with. That was like,
Yeah.
that was what, 2 years ago, last year?
Yeah, I mean they funded the surgeries and stuff that
From
helped
the
save his
surgery and all
life,
of it.
man.
Yeah. So
Word
that was
up.
public. So that's Vody
Yeah,
had that.
yeah.
So we've seen it be used in that way. But
And
normally
then
I don't.
also,
Go ahead.
well, I was going to say also with the trucking situation up in Canada,
Right. I was
that's
just
a
thinking
big
about that.
one that we
Yeah, that's a
probably
big one.
will talk about a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that those kind of situations bring it up, I think, in
Yeah.
culture.
Well said. All right. So let's get into the history of a little bit of the history. And where we're headed is to so the gift and the curse. So we're going to talk about the gift, but there's also a darker side of GoFundMe that we'll explain as we walk through this. All right. So just a little bit of history. So GoFundMe is the biggest crowd sharing platform. It helps raise money. This is sort of their explanation. It helps raise money for events, including celebrations, or help with funding bills from accidents or illnesses. All right. So GoFundMe was started in 2010. GoFundMe's had more than 2 million campaigns. All right.
That's bananas.
So more than 2 million campaigns. And let's think about, why is my face like super orange? You see, I feel like
because of my shirt.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, good gosh, it's like my face.
My shirt is shining on you.
I'm over here looking like Rudolph out this joint. Like, man, what is happening right now? I had to
That's
change
so
the color on
wild.
one of my lamps, man. I was over here looking like Rudolph the Big Black Reindeer. All right. So it's been around. GoFundMe was started in 2010 by Brad Damphouse and Andrew Ballister. All right. They in 2 million campaigns, get this. This is how much GoFundMe has raised in 2 million campaigns in 12 years.
Bananas.
More than $5 billion.
Oh, I heard 9 billion today.
You heard 9?
I heard 9 billion. Yeah.
We'll go with that because it's more sensational. $9
$9
billion.
billion.
Fam, that's greater than a lot of nations' GDP.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's
That
crazy.
joint can fund a couple of countries, like $9 billion. Wow.
I mean, it's the people, so
Right, yeah. Well, 2 million people who've given across the world. I mean, the $9 billion is a lot. All right.
it's a lot of money.
So it started in 2008 with what was called Creative Fund. And it started in San Diego, California. And it was developed, like I said, by Brad Damphouse and Andrew Ballister. And in 2015, GoFundMe was doing well enough that those two guys sold it to a company called Accel Partners and Technology. Right. So they took it when they sold it. So remember, GoFundMe started in 2010. Well, 2008, it was Creative Fund. By 2010, it was GoFundMe. And they sold it in 2015. And it was back then, the value was $600 million.
Wow.
Now, I think the reason why is because what happens is GoFundMe takes a 2.9% of whatever comes in. So that's sort of the administration fee for GoFundMe. All right. 2.9%. So if you're doing a campaign that's decent and they're getting essentially 3%, that's just free money for just hosting this sort of activity, right? Having the software to host the money, have it come in, store it, and then distribute it out to whatever without anyone having to do it. It's crazy, right? It's kind of, it was like, now we call GoFundMe Cash App, right?
Right.
People want to get, now GoFundMe is called Cash App. They just cash at me, send it to this. Here's my Cash App. I see people putting this all over the place on YouTube channels, or maybe we need to do that. Here's the Cash App, my G. Throw some in.
Yeah, well, I mean, just don't get too much because the government's gonna come knocking for that too.
When the government comes knocking for everything, right? They do that. All right, so GoFundMe sells for 2015 for $600 million. I mean, hold on, bro. Before I'm just trying to imagine me and you start a company, right? In 2008. Then we changed the name to the company from Creative Fund to GoFundMe in 2010, right? And all we did was set up, we had to pay for servers and things like that, but basically we set up a system, a digital system to collect currency, redistribute that currency, and then we take 3%, right? 5 years later, we sell it for $600 million. This is what they say only in America, right? It's the American dream. That's insane to me. All right. So in 2017, GoFundMe was sold again. It was acquired by a company called CrowdRise, which continues to develop it. All right. So it's based in Redwood City, California, has offices all over San Diego, Dublin, Ireland, and all that stuff. Right. So the reality of GoFundMe was initially it was somewhat controversial because it was how do you trust first of all GoFundMe in receiving the money, and then how do you trust that the people you give it to are going to use it for what they said? And as many of us know, we've heard scandals like the McClurys, the white couple, the lady who ran out of money in your neck of the woods out in Philadelphia. She ran out of money, and a homeless dude who had been panhandling all day gave her his last 20.
Wow.
So she starts a GoFundMe page and for him and tells a story. And she ends up going on Good Morning America. She's on Megyn Kelly's show. They raised over $400K for this dude. But they didn't give him none of it.
Really?
What? You ain't heard about this story? Just like I ain't heard about the dude in the song, right?
Yeah.
They didn't give this dude none of it. And he was they got charged with fraud and all this stuff. And people were like, and and they basically went on trips. They bought cars. I mean, think about it. In your mind, it's 400K that just came out of nowhere,
Right.
and it exceeded what they were asking for.
That's crazy.
So because of that, so GoFundMe had to make some changes, right? So here's the thing: GoFundMe, which is interesting because this happened like a couple years ago, but GoFundMe changed what it allows you to do because it used to allow you to do anything, right? But then here's what happened. In the beginning, GoFundMe ran into trouble for allowing certain causes to be used to get money. In 2014, GoFundMe canceled a site set up by a woman seeking donations to pay for an abortion. This was controversial because abortion is legal and considered a medical procedure. The company had to put the site back up. So they took it down and then they had to put it back up, right? Then it says this: causes that GoFundMe does not allow include anything in violation of the law, purchasing weapons, gambling, drugs, sex workers, money management services, intimidation. Can you? I wonder what would a campaign be about intimidation?
How do you even manage these things? Like, how does somebody manage whether or not you're doing this for sex work, especially with all the different like verbiage that people use? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I
So
don't,
I
I don't,
think they manage it by what you're asking for, the reason why you're asking.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
They could
obviously,
use
if you're
any
lying,
kind
they
of
don't know that.
verbiage. Yeah, yeah.
They don't know if you're going to lie. I mean, I wouldn't be like, hey. I mean, to me, I just thought, how do you do a campaign for intimidation?
Right.
Like, who would do that? Like, yo, if you don't give me 10Ks, I'm gonna kill this dude. I mean, like, what? You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna break some kneecaps at the elementary school. I mean, like, what do you tell? Like, so I'm glad that they don't do campaigns for intimidation, but I don't know if anybody really would do that. Who's going to give money to that?
Sounds
Anything
good.
perverse or offensive, and anything that promotes bigotry, right? And bigotry is a buzzword nowadays. As of 2015, GoFundMe does not allow support of legal defense. This came after Sweet Cakes by Melissa tried to raise money when they were fined for refusing to bake a cake for a same-sex marriage. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was crazy, right? So these Christians were fined, and someone started a GoFundMe to help them pay their legal fees, and they had a ton of money, bro.
Yeah. How could they not do that? How could they stop the money from going to them?
Because these people don't want to honor the Lord, so they're not thinking about that. So they found a loophole, but so they did not allow support of legal offense. So I remember that they took away. It was a ton of money. Like I was actually encouraged that these believers were given all this money to be able to pay their legal fees for not doing that.
Yeah, it's encouraging because you would expect that to be, for you as well if something goes down, because
right,
it's possible.
yeah, it could be, but you can't raise for legal fees anymore.
Yeah, that's so crazy to me that they would change that.
Yeah,
just because of that.
Mm.
I mean, that kind of goes to speak to the character of the people behind GoFundMe.
Sure. So GoFundMe but it's still a great resource. Look, it allows people to give without receiving and just be servants in that sense, able to serve and bless other people. And that's been good. So let's look at some of the most successful campaigns of GoFundMe, right? So that was the history. Let's look at the campaigns, some of the best campaigns. All right. Breonna Taylor, right? So funds for Breonna Taylor. So set up on behalf of Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer. The ongoing justice for Breonna is what the GoFundMe was, and it's raised $6.7 million to date for her family. So that's in less than a year, because Breonna Taylor was like last May when she was killed, I believe, by police. So that's 6.7 million in a year. Many of us wouldn't make that in 10 years. No. 20 years, maybe. That's insane. Like just that. Like, I mean, that's in and of itself. That's almost like, and as a matter of fact, I've known people to receive less money in a civil lawsuit.
For sure.
Against like law enforcement or someone, and they got 6.7. All right. Remember the Pulse nightclub shooting? So down in Orlando, Florida, a couple of years ago, a guy walked into basically a gay nightclub and shot the place up, shot a bunch of people. So Equality Florida established a GoFundMe for the victims of the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Okay, this guy named Omar Martin, he killed 49 people. That's right. That was crazy.
That
and
was
wounded
bananas.
53 more at the gay club, with the mass shooting deemed the deadliest terrorist attack in the U.S. since September 11th. They raised $7.8 million for the victims of that.
Wow.
That's insane. A lot of the biggest campaigns are actually due to tragedy, which is encouraging. All right. All right. 2018, you got the Stoneman Douglas Victims Fund. In 2018, 37,000 individuals and companies made donations to a GoFundMe for the victims of the February 14th mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. I remember that joint. That joint was crazy. 17 people, 14 students, and 3 staff members were killed in the deadliest high school mass shooting in U.S. history. After being closed that June, it was decided that the funds would be divided up. So here's how they divided up the money for this. So you got $400,000 for the families of the 17 victims who were killed. So $400,000 each for the victims. Then you got $1.63 million between 18 of the injured survivors. So they divvied up $1.63 million. Just if you think about, I mean, I'm not trying to make light of it, right? Like it was a tragedy, right? I can't imagine like my children's school. Every time I drop my kids off at school every day, I think like, man, that would be insane to like have that happen and not know how your kids are, right?
For sure.
But when you think about this, like, okay, these kids are getting a couple $100,000 simply for being survivors of an attack. Like, there's a lot of people who never see any money for stuff that they go through. Mm-hmm. So in a crazy way, like, what a blessing that is, right? Like, you're traumatized on some level, but then there's money to say, hey, that says a lot. I don't want to jump ahead, but that says a lot about sort of the view, sort of the capitalistic epistemology, right? A culture that we live in. It's like money will cure the problems that you have. Money will fix it. And it does temporarily, but it causes other problems. All right.
Right.
$2,500, listen to this, $2,500 for every student who was inside the building at the time of the shooting.
That's
so
wild.
if you were just in the building, I'm talking about away from it, you got $2,500. And then $1,000 for the students who were elsewhere on campus.
So who decided how this gets divided up?
The let me see. I think whoever started the GoFundMe account. It doesn't say. It just says it just says Stoneman Douglas. Doesn't say who. This was $12 million.
Got you.
All right. So then you got the Las Vegas Fund, 11.8. So these are GoFundMe's most successful accounts.
Right.
Successful campaign. On October 1st, I remember this. I remember all these. On October 1st, 2017, Stephen Paddock opened fire from his hotel room window on the crowd attending the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip.
That's the joint, the Eminem video.
That's the one he did, right? He did a video like this. 60 people were killed and over 800 injured, making the tragedy America's deadliest mass shooting in history.
Wow.
Steve Sisolak, Clark County Commissioner Chair from Las Vegas, established a GoFundMe for the victims of the shooting. And in the 5 months it was active, the GoFundMe raised nearly $12 million. The fund was then transferred to a nonprofit organization, and the campaign raised a further near $20 million, with the families of those killed and victims left with brain damage or paralysis were given $275,000 each.
Wow.
That's insane. Like, in a good way and a bad way, right? It's crazy that this dude did this, but it's great that these people were given money. Like, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like Drake's God's Plan video. These people are just out in the street, and he walks up and gives them $50,000 cash. This amount of money. People just crying. It's amazing what money can do, what it accomplishes. The next biggest campaign was George Floyd. All right. So GoFundMe has said the campaign received the highest number of donations ever on the site, with more than 500,000 people in 140 countries donating at an average of $29 per donation. The fundraiser has raised about 14.7 million, well above the original target of 1.5 million. So whoever started the George Floyd GoFundMe was hoping to get 1.5 million, right? But then they got 14.7 million. Like, that's an insane a lot of money. I don't know who it went to or how they dispersed that one. That's a lot of money. And then the highest was the We Build the Wall Fund. Now I remember Trump running as part of his campaign saying that he was going to build the wall and that Mexico was going to pay for it. Real tough talk, right?
Yeah, I remember that too.
There's no wall, and Mexico was like, yeah, right. No comprende is what Mexico said. So We Build the Wall campaign raised more than $25 million, but all of the donations have been refunded. The fundraiser was established in 2018 by U.S. Air Force veteran Brian Colfage in the hope of building private sections of the wall along the Mexico-U.S. border. Colfage had hoped to raise $1 billion, but as that target was not met, Colfage offered all donors a refund. That's kind of crazy, bro. But that says a lot, though. You get $25 million raised to build a wall that Mexico was supposed to pay for, according to then U.S. President Donald Trump.
Right.
So crazy stuff. So it's clear that, there's tons of other campaigns we could look at, but that's not the purpose of our show today. We're going to move into something else that's more concerning. But the reality is the building of the wall, all of these campaigns, particularly the ones that deal with tragedy, like a lot of them, there's like 5 or 10 more I was going to put on here, but I was like, but they're just dealing with tragedy. I think it's been amazing to see that. It's to see it. I think that's where you kind of be like, man, I appreciate kind of the heart of people, or what they call the American spirit, right? Where you just have, and sometimes these campaigns that come from all over the world, like George Floyd got money from all over, but you see that happening. Jack, why don't you talk about the truckers joining Canada? Because you mentioned it. Why don't you go into
now, I'm just, so what bothers me about the whole GoFundMe thing, and I know we're not going to turn this show into that, but just the idea that they can determine what is legit for giving funds towards and what is not legit for giving funds towards. And that's kind of where this goes down, this story goes down that road. When they were raising money for the truckers that were not getting paid, that were out there, striking and basically stopping traffic because of all the mandates that were being put upon them. They couldn't work.
This is in Canada, by the way.
In Canada, yeah. They just couldn't work. So, people started to GoFundMe and started raising funds, and they just put a hold to it and took all the funds. And they were going to give it to charities and say, in the name of the truckers, supposedly, or I forget what else they were going to do with it, but they wound up just refunding the money. But that's not what the truckers wanted. What the people who wanted to give the money actually wanted it to go to the hands of the truckers so that they can keep living and being able to survive while the mandates were happening. So these were men, a lot of them who privately own trucks. Right, and when you have suffering financially. Yeah, man. If you have your own business and you want to be a truck driver, you buy a truck or you rent a truck and you go out there and you make money. You get accounts. And a lot of people are set up that way. There are bigger businesses as well. But all that to say, the mandates shut down the business pretty much. And they needed to survive. And people started GoFundMe to fund them. And they wound up taking the money and acting as if though they couldn't do that because it tied into the political realm. Which is the same thing with the baker, the lady with the sweet cakes, where they said, no, you don't get the funding. Why? Because it was gonna help them with their legal fees, because the case had to do with homosexuality. That's why, it became political, which is where we're going anyway. So
right. And I think when I hear stuff like that, and I agree with you, I think it's but there's a part of me, and this is where I jokingly earlier talked about Cash App, right? This is where I think now people are just like, send it to my Cash App. I don't know how well Cash App tracks these things. If you pay taxes on the money that you get and all that, I don't know. Because I only use Cash App occasionally, so I don't know how it works. But in terms of like large sums of money, I don't know if it's just like you just transfer to your account like you would smaller sums. But it does make me wonder though, like at what place does an organization, like if you set up a company, right, and you establish it for a purpose, at what point do you get to determine what it can be used for and what it can't be used for? That's what I would love to know. Like I looked at some stuff that saw, and there are people who were like, man, these people are hypocrites, kind of like what you're kind of pointing to. Like, man, these people are controlling the situation. I don't know if I think it's wrong though. I mean, I think the causes I didn't like. I think that, the sweet cakes and then what happened to these truckers in Canada, but I don't know if they shouldn't. And you're not saying this, but I don't know if they shouldn't be allowed to determine what they deem as worthy. I think I don't know if they put out, this is what we think. Because when you say like bigotry, well, what does that mean? How are you defining bigotry? Like
Right.
Facebook will be like, this doesn't meet our community standards. Or Twitter, it's like, well, what does that mean? I mean, Twitter will put like you ever click on like a Twitter feed, and then it'll see like this little box that says like show offensive tweet that may, and you click on show, like show me the tweet, but
Right.
it warns you it might be offensive. Then you click on the joint and it says, hey guys, I bought a jar of pickles today. Anybody want some? And you're like, what are you talking about? Like what is offensive about this tweet? And
Right.
so I don't know what the objective standard of morality they're going by, but I do think that it is. I don't like the causes that they used to not support, but I do think that they have, just like any other organization stops, they have a right to be like, we don't support, we don't want to use this for that, and that's the challenge. I just don't know if it's in there, if everyone knows who makes that decision, and then where is it in print that this can't happen, or where is it defined that like you can't do this. So some of these things now, legal fees, some of these things have been defined, but and now they're saying they can't do that. But it's interesting to see how they kind of do this and choose to who they give to and who they don't and what they support.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you try to, intermingle morality with business,
It's tough.
it gets hairy.
It's tough.
I mean, it gets
It's
hairy
tough.
unless you have an ultimate morality that you stand under. Then things are
Yeah.
a little bit different, and then you have to depend on honesty all across the board, and it
Which you're
gets
just
tough.
not going to get, right? That's
You're
just
not. You're
unrealistic.
not
Whenever money's involved, it just becomes something different, right?
for sure.
Especially with large sums of money. You're dealing with smaller money. It's like large sums of money are different. Well, this
Yeah.
is where GoFundMe as a campaign has its gifts. It's wonderful. Like, hey, you can help people. I've seen people, everything from, man, my car got broken into, someone stole my laptop. You post to GoFundMe, and then people can give to it.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think
people have gotten money for surgeries and everything.
100%. Yeah, like we talk about voting,
Who
you
don't
got money
have
for heart
health.
surgery, right?
Yeah.
GoFundMe is sort of the challenge with GoFundMe on that end is it's kind of like a dating app, right? When you go like a dating app, you got to put like your picture and all this stuff and all this stuff about you. And so if no one clicks on your link, they're not clicking on it because they don't like your personality, right? They don't know you. They're not clicking because they don't like the way you look in the photo. So it kind of has this sense of, if you go in a dating app and you trying to find someone and then you don't get any hits, you're going to feel some type of way because it could actually affect your psyche even more, because now it's like, okay, these people must not find me attractive
Right.
in that sense. Well, GoFundMe can be the same way because you put out a cause that you care about, that you need money for, and then you get $50. I remember one time on Facebook, I don't know this dude, but I've seen this dude over the years, and I've always thought he's just not my type of dude, but he was saying, I'm depressed, I'm going through a lot, and he put it on Facebook for people to donate to this thing. And man, I remember like weeks going by, and that joint was still only at like $75. And he had, more, he had a few hundred, maybe 1,000 followers or something on Facebook. So then he got offended and then wrote a post like, man, people don't care. They're not all of that. And it was just like, man, I don't know, fam. Like, that's the thing about these types of campaigns is like, if people don't give, then what does that say about you? Like, how do you process that?
Right.
Like, you got to think like, man, people don't bang with me and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But the other challenge with GoFundMe that is much more serious that we're about to get into is, so GoFundMe starts off as a campaign, right? It's a campaign where you can give, which we crowdfunding, which we've talked about. You give money to these things and all of it. But there's a more serious side, and really looking at what GoFundMe is and how does it impact society? What is it exposing or revealing about society and culture, particularly, I'm going to say American society, because I don't live anywhere else, even though through technology, we have the ability to understand what's happening in other nations. I primarily think about America, and then I primarily think about how things impact the church that I'm aware of. But there is more than just a campaign of GoFundMe. Now, it's not clear to me if the campaign is imitating life or if life is imitating the campaign, right? You say art imitates life, right? But something since GoFundMe has started, something significant has shifted around the same time that we've seen a lot of the stuff on politics and race and sexuality. A lot of the things have happened in the last 12 years, right? So you got the Black Lives Matter, the rise of Black Lives Matter in 2014, stemming from Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown. Then you got gay marriage, Ogre Befell and versus such and such in 2015, which then led to the rise of transgenderism and their
Hold on.
wanting their
Did you
people
say
to card.
Ogre Befeld?
Yeah,
You
Ogre
said
Befell. I
Ogre
think
Befeld.
that's her name. That's the name of the lady who did it. Older lady. She was basically
Isn't it
suing.
Obergefell?
Oh, Bergerfeld, whatever. I mean, what, you know what I'm saying? Would I grow up with the lady? Like, I don't know the woman.
Nah, but you definitely said Ogre Befeld.
Yeah, Ogerfeld. I don't remember.
That's still funny though.
That's how we do it. It's
You gotta let me laugh
Ogerfeld.
about that real quick. All right,
Ogre
go
Buffet.
ahead.
You know what I'm saying? That's how we do it. Right. So you got that, and then you got the politics and all of that stuff. So there's a lot that's happened in the last 12 years since GoFundMe has started. And so GoFundMe, which began as a campaign, underlying issue, I think GoFundMe actually transitioned from a campaign to an ideology. So what happened was when GoFundMe initially was about giving money, receiving money, and then it slowly transitioned into an ideology. And we're going to talk about GoFundMe, the ideology, and its impact on us in society. So let's look at, first of all, to see this, to see the ideology creep in, first we have to have somewhat of a little bit of fun and look at the worst campaigns, some of the worst.
Yeah.
Some of the worst campaigns.
Before we go there, you know there's videos out there that actually show you how to start a good GoFundMe.
Yeah, there are.
Like they coach you on how to basically how to manipulate people.
Yeah, they do.
That's basically what it is.
Yeah. I've seen YouTube videos that show you that. Yeah.
Right.
How to do a good GoFundMe. Like, I mean, they just show you how to do it. It's amazing that people need to do that. And I'm with DPT. The GoFundMe at the gas pump right now. That you don't want GoFundMe because they're gonna take 3%, my brother. That's a gallon of gas or two. What you want to do is get that cash out there. You don't want that, my bro.
Yeah, I filled up my Rogue. It was like 65 plus.
Shit, man, it's $90 to fill up my soccer mom van. It's ridiculous.
That's crazy,
bro. Making me wish I was petite and driving a Ciroc or something. A Honda Civic, old school. All right. GoFundMe is no longer a campaign, but it is fundamentally an ideology. And we're going to walk through why we think that way and and explain how we see this play out. First, let's start with some of the worst campaigns of GoFundMe, right? Here's some of the worst campaigns. So one dude had a GoFundMe goal of $50,000 and he wanted to be a stay-at-home dad. So he started a GoFundMe account where he wanted to stay at home and be with his kids. And I don't know what 50,000 was going to get you. I don't know how long that was going to get you. But he had a goal of 50 grand and he raised a whopping $10. $10, which was probably his friend put up $10, right?
Probably.
All right. Another terrible GoFundMe campaign was a Netflix and chill campaign. Now, I don't know if everybody knows what that means, right? Netflix and chill is just basically saying we're going to watch a movie and have sex. That's what Netflix and chill basically means. So someone put a GoFundMe goal. This is real. A real goal for Netflix and chill of $20. And they raised a whopping $0.
People are just stupid.
$20. I'm sure that was a joke. This one was not a joke. This campaign is not a joke. And it's entitled, it was in the description, Spoiled Rich Lesbian Wants New Home. So there was a girl, a spoiled rich lesbian. This is Gay Pride Month, so we got to get them shouts. Spoiled rich lesbian. She had a goal of $5 million.
Wow.
So she had started a GoFundMe account of $5 million because she wants to buy a mansion in California. Lesbian, spoiled rich lesbian. All right. I forgot. I don't remember how long the campaign was up, but she raised a whopping $26. So here's my question, Strike. Do you think she returned it?
Who gave her $26? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. The lesbian that was going to move in, her roommate.
Probably.
I don't know who that was.
Got the first second's rent.
Right. You got the first two, you got the first little bit of groceries. All right. So this one, I could not believe this. So this one was a Kickstarter, right? Crowdfunding. A guy had a goal of $10. This was his goal, $10, because he wanted money to make potato salad. Okay? This is real. $10 goal to make potato salad. Here's how much he raised. $63,041. Fam. $63,041?
That's bananas. I mean,
to make
people wanted potato salad. They was all like, yo, where's my potato salad? I got some arroz con gandules and I want that.
Right. You would, I mean, all you do is buy a couple $100 worth of the local store and just ship it out to people.
Word up. I mean, like, start a GoFundMe for a food truck.
That's what man, listen. I need to if you can get 63,000 for I'm gonna start a GoFundMe for all one size fits all shirts. I think those are I think those are really one size fits all. I think is offensive. It's oppressive. I just want y'all to know
they're called blankets.
Yeah, right. As they call for me. All right. So you got another person who started a Kickstarter crowd. Their goal was $4,000 and they raised $6,800. And this is what they were trying to do. They wanted to raise money to put encouraging messages in the sky via airplane. I don't know what's happening in the country right now. What's happening in the world?
Yeah, I don't know either.
$6,800. All right, it gets crazier. There was a GoFundMe for, it's called Shoe Fly, and here's what they had a goal of $15,000, the Shoe Fly, and they raised $266,000 to get rid of flies and mosquitoes. I can see why people believe that.
Yeah, I would give money.
I can see why people believe that. So they asked for $15,000 and they got over $500,000 for that.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's fraud because I saw mosquitoes this morning in front of my house.
Ain't nobody listen. They're like the Lord said. Poor people gonna be around forever.
They will be around. Mosquitoes and flies. If you don't like them,
I'm not equating poor people to mosquitoes and flies. That's
I hope you're not.
That is
shouts to the poor people watching.
My bad. Yeah.
If you have any issue, go to hishypeman.com and you talk to him about that.
Wow.
Here was one that I thought was the most crazy. So there was a Kickstarter fund for an ostrich pillow.
Okay. Like a pillow shaped like an ostrich, or
when's the last time you see the ostrich? Have you ever seen the ostrich in real life?
At the zoo. At the zoo. The Philadelphia Zoo.
Oh man. So someone had a goal of 70 grand to make an ostrich pillow,
That's
and they
crazy.
raised $194,000. So almost three times exceeded the amount.
Right. That
All
is
right,
so crazy.
there's a ton of crazy campaigns that are happening, but what I want to highlight is the GoFundMe that began as a campaign has now become an ideology. And it's actually something that I think, and again, this is my perspective, obviously, it's cross examined, so you can go where you want. I think GoFundMe is it's a campaign still, but it's now an ideology. And it's a perfect illustration of what you see happening in a culture right now, both in politics and race, all of it. Like everything happening right now, you can really connect back to GoFundMe in the sense that it is the campaign and what you try to do and what you're trying to accomplish has become an ideology, right? So here's how this is. When you look at what GoFundMe is, and not everyone, we've already highlighted that there are legitimate reasons to use GoFundMe, and people have had health issues, they've had losses, and have been benefited. We've read tragedies of people shot in schools and murdered and killed. We talked about, even though they didn't get the money in Canada, there's a lot of good, but a lot of GoFundMe, and in fact, I don't have the actual stat, but I think it's the majority of the GoFundMe accounts are not about things that we would consider good causes. The majority of them are things like starting a band, moving out of my parents' house, trying to get a sex change, or tons of different things that
Terrible.
are happening, right? So what GoFundme the campaign is a resource to get money from people for something that you need or want. GoFundMe the ideology is I want something and I want you to give it to me. Like I want something and I want it to come from you. Like I'm not going to pay for it. I'm not going to afford it. I want someone else to give it to me, right? I'm in one sense, I'm owed something from other people and I want this. And this is why you will see people that will go on and ask for the most selfish requests that have nothing to do with any kind of suffering or any of it, or it's suffering by lack of being able to have a fulfilled desire. So when
Right.
you look at the campaign, it provides the context for you to be able to get some money for something you may need. But GoFundMe, the ideology, has turned into what I've called the age of entitlement, where I'm entitled to have these things. And the way you see it play out is I have desires, and those desires become demands, right?
Now,
So
real quick though, before you go on, you made the claim that everything that is occurring can be tied to what you're saying about GoFundMe or to GoFundMe.
I didn't say everything. I specifically named certain things in American culture like politics, race.
Right, right,
A
right,
lot of
right.
how we got here can be tied to what I think is a GoFundMe ideology.
That's a big claim, and most people probably would never think to go that route with GoFundMe.
I don't think so. But this is what we
I
do.
don't think so either. But I just wanted to make that known that that's a pretty big claim. But there's a tie. There's a tie. You're
Mhm,
gonna see the connection.
mhm. It is. No, it's a big claim. But I think if you look at, and we're going to walk through this, right, in just a moment. When you look at the structure of what's happening in society, I'm talking about the last, like I said earlier, so GoFundMe started in 2010. The last 12 years, I think many of us would say the world is kind of turned upside down in a very short period of time in a way that is significant to us. Like I haven't seen the world be like this in my lifetime. So
Nah,
again, if you're old enough to be in the 60s was a crazy decade. I would say the 60s was a crazy decade, and then 2012 to 2022 has been, or 2010 to 2020 has been a decade as crazy as the 60s, I think. I
nah. I
think
mean,
even more so. Huh?
we haven't even nobody in history has ever been exposed to as much as we are today.
Well,
You
that's
know
what I
what
was
I
going to
mean?
say, even
Yeah.
more so. And that's largely because of the technological platitudes that
Right.
we've had, right?
Right.
So the platitudes technologically, we're able to connect. Like there was a point in time where you didn't know what was happening outside of in the world except for your local news.
Yeah.
You only knew what your local news said and what print media, your newspaper, wherever you
Right.
lived. Like for me, it would be the Washington Post or the Washington Times. You know, you had those, and then you had smaller publications in like particular towns or cities you lived in. Like we lived in Gaithersburg, we had a thing called Gaithersburg Gazette, the Bowie, whatever, Blade. Or there's different publications, but there was a point where you didn't know what was happening except for what your local media said. And then you get
Right.
national media, you get cable news, you get the CNNs, and you get news where now you're dealing with more, or you had to watch, like, remember 60 Minutes? This is when you had to watch 60 Minutes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
60 Minutes, or maybe Dateline later on. You would get these kinds of things happening. It was very selective, very small, very curated kind of news. And now we have this sort of unrelenting exposure to all these things happening.
It's an ever
So
flowing flood.
constantly,
Man.
like it
Yeah.
is, it's an ever flowing flood. So now I can find out, I can be inundated. We're given more information in a single day than they would have received in their lifetime, maybe a couple hundred years ago.
For sure.
Like just clear, like, oh my gosh, we're exposed to everything, right? So when you think of the culture that we live in and the exposure to people's desires and needs, I mean, the very fabric and the very success of GoFundMe is connected to people having access to what you need and knowing and having the knowledge of it, right? So that becomes the campaign, the technological platitudes that we have, turn it into really, and again, it could be this is what's already in the heart, or again, it's campaign. The campaign is imitating life, or life imitates campaign. But the ideology of sort of this GoFundMe becomes a way that society is actually structured now. I'd say right now we are living in the GoFundMe generation, and let me explain what I mean by that. So with GoFundMe, you have what is I have a desire and I want others to pay for that desire, right? And that's fine. And there are times where that happens and you go to that. But then as you look at a lot of what people are asking for, it's slowly moved into I have a desire. I want others to pay for it, right? Fine. But then those desires in the ideology, they become kind of demands.
Mm-hmm.
They start to say, I want demands. I'm demanding that. Not only do I just desire this, but I'm demanding that I get to have this. Right? These expectations, desires become expectations, expectations becomes demands. And essentially what people are asking for is, and here's where you can get thrown off by what I mean about the GoFundMe generation or about the ideology. You see, in GoFundMe, the currency is money. The currency is finances. It's actual money. It's digital money that gets transferred into bank accounts. But in the ideology of GoFundMe, the currency is not necessarily finances. The currency sometimes is approval. The currency sometimes is acceptance. The currency of the ideology of GoFundMe is that you give me what I want. It may not cost you a cent in your pocket, but it will cost you potentially your morality. It may cost you your understanding of society. It may cost you your religious conviction. It may cost you fill in the blank, right? Doesn't have to be the ideology of GoFundMe is not about financial what we consider currency as really the money, but there is always a currency in the ideology of GoFundMe. You're always paying for something. You're always giving something to someone who demands it, expects it, and feels like they're entitled to it. So let's think about some of the things that have happened in the last 12 years, right? You look at the issues on race, explosion, racial explosion, right? You got one side that's demanding reparations, that's demanding people give repent of white privilege, that's demanding that white people sort of are taking holding white people's feet to the fire for historical racism, demanding all these things, right? So you get that happening. And it's not just, these aren't desires, right? These are demands. These are demanding that people react to these things. And people have acquiesced and given into that and said,
Yeah, I mean,
okay,
BLM used GoFundMe.
BLM
GoFundMe,
used
yeah.
GoFundMe. They
Yeah.
used GoFundMe, specifically the actual organization, but they also created the ideology, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you get these demands racially, and they become expectations. I'm expecting you to respond to this. These desires become expectations. Those expectations become demands, right? Then you have a backlash against that. No, we demand that you vote Republican. We demand that you get rid of this. We demand that you have these issues, right? There's all of this. I have these desires. They become expectations, and then they become demands. And we've seen this with race and with politics and with sexuality, right? Once gay marriage hit, it was just like, blow. Now, because if you remember back in the late 90s, right? So a kid named Matthew Shepard gets killed because he's gay.
I remember that
And
name.
he was
Yeah.
martyred. That was around the same time that Ellen DeGeneres came out as a lesbian on her show. Before she had the talk show, she had Ellen, the Ellen Show or whatever, and it was like a kind of a skit, like a Jerry Seinfeld type Seinfeld. It was kind of like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
She comes out on her show, actually, to the woman who played in Jurassic Park. The first, I forgot her name, the lady with the long blonde hair, that she's in the new one that's about to come out. She came out to her on the show. I'm a lesbian, said it into the microphone, and everyone was like, what? And that was like a big deal. Around that time, within the gay community, within LGBT, it was about tolerance. Just tolerate us, right? It was tolerance. We want you to understand we're here. Okay, fine. We can tolerate you. We can tolerate you. Because with Matthew Shepard being martyred, he became the martyr, right?
Yeah, I mean that was during the born gay era.
That was during that era, yeah.
Yeah.
That also was fused with the no bullying era. So
Yeah,
around
for
that
sure.
same time,
For sure.
because my era was Mothers Against Drunk Driving, like mad. That's when in my era, those were like some of the more public. No one wasn't really talking about bullying when I was in the early '90s and stuff. When I was like in high school and all that.
Yeah, I remember Mad. I remember like Say No to Drug
All
movement.
that was sort of my era, right?
Yes,
80s and
yeah, the
90s, Say No to
AIDS.
Drugs, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was his dad, Mad Mother. But then it becomes like the no bullying movement, right? It's
Right, I
coupled
remember that.
with, because you had, then you had this at the same time you had Columbine, Dylan Klebold, and then go and shoot the school up. So there was a lot happening. But around then, it was like be tolerant of gay people, right? And then slowly, as you get around 2008, it becomes California votes no on Proposition 8 that approves of gay marriage. And everyone starts wearing these, not everyone, but people start wearing these no hate with an 8, H8, the number 8, no hate, right? So this starts to become a reality. Now it moves from tolerance to acceptance, right? Like acceptance and then approval. Then all of a sudden it becomes approval. Then gay marriage passes in 2015 Supreme Court, and now it becomes approval, right? Now, then it becomes, after that, really, that's when the language of being an ally starts to explode, right? There is this desire. We just want to be tolerated, accepted. We got you. Okay, good. Fine, we can do that. Now it's approval. We approve of the lifestyle. Now it's an ally, right? Now, not only do you approve it, you fight for it. So the desire becomes an expectation. It becomes a demand. And the currency is potentially even your own religious conviction, your own sense of your own, or even if it's not religious, your own sense of morality and right and wrong. That's the currency. So the currency isn't always money, that what we would consider money in the Gofundme ideology. It becomes maybe morality, and I think it often is morality. And then it's now in this day and age. So that was 2015. In 2022, it's not even just the currency is now not morality, it's actual sanity. Like the currency now is that you give up the very foundation of truth that you understand truth to be. So now, so now we're getting ready to get a little deeper. So stay with me. We're getting ready to get deeper because a lot of this is sort of, so I mean, let me say this as a precursor beforehand. Like I have no issues with capitalism. Like this is the only socioeconomic reality that I've known. I have no desire to be a part of any other socioeconomic reality. I don't. It just is what it is. But there are significant issues with capitalism. The very foundation of capitalism, just to be very succinct, the very foundation of capitalism is its privatization, right? It's individual rights and privatization of goods that I, the person, individual, am responsible for. And I control the all of it. I control the product, I control the benefits. It's individual right. That's what capitalism is versus communism. These people control it and give it versus socialism. It's redistributed to everyone. Capitalism is about privatization, individual rights that I myself own. Okay.
It's privatized market with free market. Yeah.
Privatized market with free market.
Yeah.
But it's about me, the individual, though, right?
Yeah.
It's about me. I own that. That is what the American dream is. If we're being honest, the American dream is an economic dream. It's an economic reality. It's economical. People don't come to America because we have better trees, right? They don't come to America because our food tastes better.
Nah, you can come here and buy into what has worked.
Yeah, you can come here
that has worked.
You can come here and start a GoFundMe and make.
Right.
So what's that girl's name? Bad Barbie or whatever. The girl that Catch Me Outside girl on Phil. That girl has an OnlyFans page. She made $52 million last year.
That is crazy. That's so crazy. Just because she went on Dr. Phil and said, "Catch me outside. Catch me outside." Yo, that is so crazy.
Bro, process that. She made $52 million on OnlyFans.
So you just have to be a character. That's it. You just have to be. That's how mumble rappers and all these dudes got on. You just got to be a character. 69, this cat. Mm-hmm. You just have to be a character.
Right. So here you have, in this reality, in this ideology, there is, in a capitalistic system, we're going to view everything as privatized. As I own it. I want this. It's for me. And so in the ideology, where in the world, like Shrek, you own a business. It's Flora's. That's your business. You built it. You make the food. You serve the food. You get paid for the food. You pay your taxes, but that's your business. That's Strack's. Right? It belongs to you and Flora. That's your business, right? It's in the ideology of GoFundMe, the same idea of privatization, me. It's about me, private, what I am, but the product is your desires. The product of the ideology of the sort of what I call the capitalistic epistemology, it's you. You're the product. My desires and what I want are the product. I'm in control of it, and other people pay me, and I am in control of that. I am deserving of this, right? That's the product, and that's what happens. So the way that capitalism works as an economic system, which GoFundMe sort of is an offshoot of that. Now, when you get to the ideology, now you're dealing with the psychological impact, right? So remember, all currency is not money in the way we understand it. It's not financial. Now it's psychological currency.
Yeah.
It's like, so now it's going to cost me my sanity. Like, I have to believe that you're a man in a woman's body.
You know, it's funny because as you're describing all these things, and you're just basically describing the perfect setting for where a GoFundMe type thing could even get started.
100%.
This could never happen in communist China.
Never happen.
It's like those types of things could not be invented in those places because we don't have the thought processes, like the system that we've been brought up in the United States. This capitalistic system has just given us freedom beyond our own means. You know what I'm saying?
That's a phrase right there. Yeah. It's given us freedom beyond our own means. Just like we have access to information beyond our ability to handle it.
Right. It's the same thing. Same thing. Yeah. It's wild, man, when you think about that, because I always consider how we're social beings and we're made to be social, made to be communal. But when our community has been made so broad, I don't know how that's possible to be contained. You know, like that's where,
Yeah.
and that's where we get into like where we joke about Facebook community church and all that. We're
Right.
like, wait, just be a part of your church. Don't try to make. That's why, because we're just not built that to withstand that. And I think it's the same thing with the freedoms that we have. It's wild, these freedoms. I mean, the Tower of Babel was established on that type of mentality.
100%.
You know, that's
Yeah.
where we're at. It's crazy.
No, I think it's really fascinating when you start to really just tease it out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
When you start to really tease it out, I mean, that observation that just, yeah, you can't do this in other economic systems because those systems, even though there's sin involved in those systems, they kind of present themselves as not privatized, not individual, but
Right.
communal. But in the capitalistic system, it's privatized. And privatization means I own it. I'm individual, the I, right? There's no I in team, but there is in win, right? So the ideology of, and this is where we get it from. We get it from recognizing, hey, these private companies are making all this money. The Bad Barbie's GoFundMe made $52 million. It wasn't her and a bunch of other people. It was her, right? It's just this. But what happens is in the American cultural psyche, this idea of the American dream is really a privatized things that I am now owed by the society. So let me be clear. Black people are not the only people asking for reparations. Everyone is. Everyone's asking for reparations. Black people are asking for financial restitution. LGBT is asking for psychological restitution, right? They're asking for that. What the white supremacists are asking for a historical return to prominence, right? You got you can name any community. Everyone is asking for reparations, but not asking. I'm using that term, and they're demanding. They're demanding. So it's not just black people talking about reparations. White people are demanding a take back our country to people who think that way. I mean, you can go all over the place. There's too many small microcosms of people's desires, but there's enough groupthink within these desires to see the framework. Everyone is fighting for that reality. Now, think about this for a second. And you may have heard me mention this before, but think about this. This is GoFundMe ideology. Let's look at the political system. And if you really strip away what's happening right now, this is what they'll tell you. It's left versus right, or, black social justice versus white supremacy, gay versus trans, and trans versus heteronormativity versus non-binary. You know what this is? It's not, all of these things are, this is GoFundMe ideology, particularly under the capitalistic epistemology, the individual rights and privatizations, which is a part of the American dream. What we're talking about, what we're seeing happen in the political realm in all these places, it's the American dream versus the American dream. It's my understanding and interpretation of the American dream versus yours, versus theirs. What we hear is it's the left. No, it's the right. It's the right's fault. No. It's the way the left wants to apply the American dream versus the way the right wants to apply the American dream. It's the way this group, LGBT, wants to apply the American dream. And it's underneath it, it's a GoFundMe ideology.
You know what?
I have a need. I want you to pay for it because I'm entitled to it.
Yeah. Psalm 37, verse 4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart."
That's a bar right there.
Yeah, it is, definitely. I mean, I think what we miss, though, is the same concept there that we have with, delighting yourself in something, and then the Lord, the ultimate giver, gives you the desires of your heart when you delight yourself in that thing. So what he's talking about there is delighting yourself in him, and then he gives you himself ultimately. Right. And so when we flip that, we have a whole chapter which you talk about that, like the United States is basically going through this, a whole chapter that basically teaches the same principle just from a negative perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When you're delighting yourself in what? In the world, when you're delighting yourself in your own sensualities, all those things. In that chapter, you see the Lord gives you the desires of your heart. He gives
Mm-hmm.
you over to those things. You
Yeah.
long for those things. That's where we find ourselves in this nation. We're delighting ourselves in our own desires, and we're having them. We're, eating our cake and having it too.
Yeah.
The problem is, if you just keep on eating cake and that's all you keep eating, you're gonna die from
You will die.
your clogged arteries, and you're just gonna die. So that's what's happening. I mean,
Mm-hmm. I would totally agree, bro. I think what we're living in is, the reason why it's so fragmented, our country feels so fractured, is because historically in America, like think about where did the American dream come from? Who established it? Who initiated it? All of it. Okay, so it was white men, particularly in reality. It was white men in the governmental system created sort of the ways to be governed, and a lot of it was in reaction to what happened in England. So even stuff like the Second Amendment, and that if you really look at the Second Amendment, it talks about militias, not individual people having guns, but
right?
militias, right?
Yeah.
So even in the way people are fighting over this stuff, they're not even applying it in the way that they're applying it. How? Individually.
Mm-hmm.
The Second Amendment gun rights were not about, they were individuals to a militia to defend itself against, they were
Foreign
anticipating,
and domestic.
yeah, foreign and
But I
domestic. They
mean,
were,
it would have been implied from militias,
right.
individuals were in militias,
Right, but most
but
of the
yeah,
people that
but
are
for
in the
sure,
NRA are not in militias, bro. I be seeing
nah,
people, I be seeing people with AR-15s and with 5 kids holding AR-15s as Christmas cards. I mean, I can show you these things. These people aren't in no type of militias, no reality, right? There's nothing about that, right?
they're
So
preparing to be in the militia.
yeah, right. That's exactly what they're doing.
That's
But they're making the excuse. But again, it's an individuality, right? So everyone. So think about even the Constitution. It's a document to govern society, right? But people are fighting over how it individually applies to me and my
right,
desires. How does it apply? This is the Gofundme ideology.
because
When you
that's
think
all
of
that
the,
matters to me.
when you think of that, and let's keep it even in the same frame we talked about earlier, Strack. The government has the money, right? It takes money. So the government is the ultimate, the federal government is the ultimate crowdfunding organization
Right.
because they take, and it's not even, we're not even donating it. They're just telling us what we got to pay them. Some people paying 30, 40% of their taxes, all that stuff, right? So you have this reality where here is the ultimate GoFundMe organization,
Mm-hmm.
and they are distributing it to all these campaigns. And what people are fighting over is wanting their particular campaign to receive finances. And that's what a
Yep.
lot of this is fighting over. So it's my application, it's the left, the Democrats' application of the Constitution versus the right's application of the Constitution. This isn't about morality as much as it's about commerce and how commerce affects the way people understand and participate in morality. It's how does money make us immoral or more moral and all these different things. And this is
Right.
where the ideology has trickled down. What they call trickle down economics is trickle down to psychologics, right? Now we just in our minds, we're in a culture where we are reacting to what we feel like we want and deserve. And this is why this is why whiteness and the attack towards white people has become such a prominent thing. This is what people don't want to acknowledge. We say it here, but and I don't think it's right, but I understand why it's happening because, well, one, I think the Lord is just doing his own thing. I think he's letting people who have, it's interesting because everything but whiteness has been declared bad in some ways, except for whiteness. And now whiteness is now the one being judged, right? But what you see happening is people are reacting to the people who have largely defined, established, executed, and excommunicated people from the American dream.
Hmm.
And it's people who are white. Now, it's not obviously all white people. It's not their fault. But that's just who the people are who have benefited and who have benefited from not allowing other people to be a part of it. So now people don't trust you anymore. People
Right.
don't want to hear your interpretation of the American dream. They want someone else. They want women. They want gay people. They want black people. They want other people because we've heard of the American dream, the parameters of it, and the way we go after it and what's allowable and all of that from these white people who promoted a dream that they didn't allow people to participate in willfully until most recently within the last 50, 60 years. And in some cases, not even fully, right? So that's the pushback that we're seeing. Now people are like, you know what? The American dream for me may not be financial in the way that I thought, but there's currency though. I'm gonna get mines, right? Do you, your truth. All of these things are an offshoot of the Gofundme ideology. It's privatized. It's what I wanted. I want you to pay for it, and I deserve to have it.
You make me bringing that song in. I want what I want it now.
All of it, right? All of it. I mean, think about it. That's why those songs become like number one, right? Because they get like here's the thing, right? So I just saw Top Gun Maverick last
What'd you
Saturday.
think?
Me and
Did you like
Santiago saw it. I liked it, Joe. It was tough.
Yeah, it was tough. It was
I
good.
actually think Top Gun Maverick was a good movie for where we're at right now as a society.
Yeah, it was good.
Because it wasn't it had black people in it, white people in it, Latinos in it. Everybody was on the same page.
It was self-sacrificial.
It was self-sacrificial. It was teamwork.
Yeah.
It was humility. You watched it like the dude who was proud become humble. The dude, whatever, I forgot his name. The dude who was basically like Iceman in part one. The arrogant
I
dude.
got you. Yeah.
He comes home. You watch this happen, right? And in the movie was good. I enjoyed the film. When I left with my son, I was asking him what he thought, and he made some comments that I thought were insightful in terms of some of the stuff we're talking about now as it relates to teamwork and all of that type of stuff, right? But the thing about what I thought was interesting about that movie, and while this doesn't happen to me often, bro, that joint walked right out of my mind. That joint, I kid you not. That idea just walked slam out.
Yo,
that joint walked out and closed the door. And
you
I'm
started
trying
thinking
to
about how hot the movie was, and you was like, Choom.
That joint walked slam out because I was thinking about some other stuff while I was describing it.
That's crazy.
Dang, I was trying to make a point about that movie.
That was our quick movie segment. Top Gun was tough. Go check it out.
Yeah, it was good. Go see it. Go see it. I forgot where I was going with that. I can't remember where I was going. Man, that doesn't happen to me often. But all that to say, listen, what we're talking about in terms of the campaign and the ideology is that I think what GoFundMe did was it gave people for the first time a means to get financial help in ways that didn't require a lot of bells and whistles of going through the government or going. You could just start a GoFundMe page, and then anonymous people could devote it to you and all of it. But then once that happened and people saw it working, then it became less about real needs, right? Like I think what GoFundMe should have done is say, these are the only things we're going to allow this to take place on. But again, why would they? Because they want to make money. So 3% of a few $1 million, like all those, think about all those campaigns that we listed. I mean, they made $5 billion. That's why they can sell it physically. So of course they're not going to cap off. But if they had capped off, this is what you can do it about, then a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do it. But once it becomes, this is available, then there's an expectation. It's like the dude on Facebook. There's an expectation that, hey, I'm in need. You guys should give me this.
Right.
And that desire becomes a demand. That demand becomes that expectation. That expectation becomes a demand. And it's just a product of, and then you look at the system, the way the political system, the way everything. I mean, my Twitter line is just filled with people. It's just privatizations, capitalistic epistemology, privatization, individual ownership. I'm the product. My desires are what I want, and I want people to give me what I want. I want it. I deserve it. You got to give it to me.
It's crazy because I mean, we both would agree that it's the best system that we have on this side of eternity.
Sure.
And yet it is I think the system that lends more towards greed and sins of that nature than any other system as well. I mean, because if you're under a communist system, which I don't want to be, but like, let's say our freedoms were restricted, we would be much, much more dependent upon our faith, much, much more
100%.
dependent upon the Lord,
Mhm.
because we just wouldn't have the same liberties we have now. So, like our capacity for self-denial, like the Lord has to give us, man, more grace in that area. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah.
Like we should be pleading for the Lord to give us more grace for self-denial, you know what I mean? And for our desires to change.
And
And
I mean, that's take up your cross, right? To take
yeah,
up your cross,
yeah,
you deny yourself and follow me, right? That's embedded in the Christian ideology, right? So that's embedded in what it means to be a believer is you take up your cross, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me.
yeah,
That's what it is. Like we are at by biblical default, we are to be deniers of self. So we
right,
deny ourselves the the temptations. We say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, right? From
right,
Titus, right?
right. And,
We
and
do
this
that. We
isn't this isn't a nation that says self is the most important in its
100%.
founding documents.
And this is what I was getting at. Thank you. This is what
Yeah.
I was getting at about Top Gun.
We're back. Rewind
Yes.
selector.
Rewind. All right. This is the point I was trying to make about Top Gun 7 minutes ago. Is the thing, it was a great movie. I loved it. But what I noticed about that movie and other movies like it is there's an element where the main character, right, the hero, is always an individual who goes against the grain, breaks the rules.
Like a
Like,
rebel. Yeah, I
like a
got
rebel,
you.
right?
Yeah.
There's a sense where I'm doing it my way, right? I'm doing it the way I want to do it. I'm going against the grain. And then he ends up being right. And he's to hear all that stuff, right? But that's that same sense, right? That sense of individual autonomy, individual reality, all this stuff. Like it's about, we thrive on that as a country.
Yeah, yeah.
We build our foundation on the rugged individuals. We even see Jesus that way. And it's like, man, listen, Jesus was not a rugged individual at all, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he had disciples. He had Peter, James, and John with him. They're only the only
I mean, I,
times
I
Jesus
would
was
I
by
would say
himself.
he was a little rugged though. I would say there was some ruggedness to him. You gotta be a
Sure,
little
but
rugged to be a carpenter. I'm just saying.
but that's not what I mean though, right? So it's just that individualism that doesn't need other people. That's right, even if conventional wisdom says you're wrong. I mean, you think about most of the action movies and heroes of our day are people who go against the grain, the conventional way to do things.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's even seeped its own way into the church. When you
100%.
talk, and in more ways than some. I mean, you could talk about what we talked about last year with the way people are talking from the pulpit with such aggression towards others that have different political views,
Yeah,
but then also even with knuckleheads like, let me not. Anyway, I think he's a knucklehead, so I'll,
yeah,
I'll keep it out there. Furtick, right? So
yeah.
Furtick will say something like, "God will break the law for you." You know what I'm saying? And then teach this whole thing about running stop signs to save your son if he's dying in the back seat to get him to the hospital, and then attach that to the Lord as if though God would break the law for you. So then God becomes the ultimate rebel with a cause.
Right.
Fam, that's so crazy, but that's what's going on.
And you know what's interesting? So I'm glad you brought that up because I would not have gone there had you not said that. But you know what's interesting about Stephen Furtick and guys like him, right? So this is again, I'm only saying this because I think it connects to, even though it's a different topic, like we could do an
Sure,
episode on this,
for sure.
but
Yeah.
it connects what I'm about to say because you just said that. I wasn't going to bring this up, but when you think about the kind of teaching that he does, Stephen Furtick and there's other guys that I've been exploring this a little bit just to see what they're doing. So we wouldn't call it prosperity gospel, right? You wouldn't put them in the same vein as like a Creflo Dollar and a T.D. Jakes. And even though T.D. Jakes, he's been at Furtick's church, right?
Oh yeah, Furtick
But
was like his protege, kind
yeah,
of.
right. So,
Yeah.
but these guys don't have a prosperity gospel, but
Right.
what they teach is a prosperous gospel,
Yeah, for sure.
right? And let me explain to you what I mean by that. Prosperous gospel, you will hear this word. It's about your purpose,
Hmm.
like your purpose, God's purpose, and you're like, don't let nobody steal your purpose. It's all about your purpose, your purpose, your purpose. And it's like, well, and the way they talk about it, you know what they do? They make your relationship with God and your purpose be individualized, right?
Right.
It's individualized. Sure, we will all stand before God and give an account. We
And it's
understand that.
contingent upon your success.
But the purpose in the church is not your purpose. It's communal, and God's laid out what that is.
Right.
Like, I mean, you know what your purpose is if you're a Christian? Indeed, all
Die.
who desire to live a godly life will be persecuted.
Yeah.
Your purpose is you're going to be persecuted, so you persevere to the end. Your
Facts.
purpose is what he said to all the churches in Revelation, to those who conquer to the end or endure to the end. Your purpose is 2 Timothy 4. I've fought the good fight of faith. I've finished the race.
Right.
There is a crown of life awaiting me and all those who loved his appearing. But the way these guys will preach and talk, they use this, and I think they use purpose even differently than Rick Warren did, but maybe they're pivoting off of what Rick Warren did with a purpose-driven life years ago. But this language of purpose, it gives you a sense of there's something God has for you that's separate from the scriptures and for no one else. And you need to stay in that purpose, even though you don't know what it is. And so it individualizes your faith and makes it about you and God and looking for a purpose that's outside of the scriptures.
Yeah, I think that's one. It's actually one part of the prosperity gospel that they've taken it
Yeah,
and made it the main part.
they have.
I
They've
agree. I think
elevated.
so because I saw it growing up. I saw that not growing up, but in the faith, growing up in the
Yeah.
faith in my early 20s. I remember seeing some of that in conversation where it was really just about me. It was the elevation of man and the lowering of Christ, so that man is made to be as capable as Christ was.
Mm-hmm. Is that, and so I think, so again, so getting back to the ideology of GoFundMe is essentially expecting others to give me what I am entitled to, what I deserve,
What I believe I'm entitled to.
what I
Yeah.
believe I'm entitled to. Yeah, it's always self-belief, right? And
Right.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's created a society of selfish ambition. And so, and that's what we're, and so now what you see happening in the political, it's everyone's fighting over a sort of a capitalistic epistemology, a fighting over an individual privatized application of the American dream. And that's what it is. It's your interpretation of the American dream versus mine.
That's a
And
good
that's what's
observation.
happening. And the American dream, as we know, is a biblical nightmare. There's no moral connection, even though our faith transcends whatever cultural framework that we're in. So of course we're going to be able to apply things.
Right.
But the American dream, that type of stuff, is not. It's American dream morality, so constitutional morality fused with biblical sanctification, and it creates what we call a theological understanding of the gospel. But as it relates to GoFundMe, this is to me, it's a great illustration of the age of entitlement that we live in. I
Yeah.
think it is the crowdfunding illustration that shows the heart of the society that we live in. That I have desires, I have expectations, I'm demanding they happen, and I want you, someone else, to pay for them. It's a form of reparations. So again, don't get me wrong, there are good things that GoFundMe has done, and we're grateful for those things. There could be a time in my life where I appeal to GoFundMe. I hope I never have to, but there could be a time in my life where I appeal to. So this isn't a poo-poo on GoFundMe. It's just showing how really the enemy uses and what God is exposing, the spirit of the age of what GoFundMe is about has been taken to become not just a campaign that you give money to, but an ideology that people expect to have happen to them.
Right.
So everyone is entitled to GoFundMe. Everyone wants that to happen. All of it. Everyone's entitled to this. And even if it's not, again, currency is not always money. And I'll close with this. In the movie, The Book of Eli, fascinating movie. I like that movie a lot, right? In the movie, The Book of Eli, what was interesting was the currency in that movie was not finances.
No.
It wasn't money. They would burn that kind. They didn't care about money. It was stuff like water. And then ultimately it was the Bible, right?
Yeah.
The word that he really wanted because he thought it can change the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, remember when he was like, man, I need some cat oil. Do you got cat oil?
Right.
I mean, he was trading stuff for, those were things that were currency. It wasn't finances for those things. Those things were a currency. So what you get is this kind of reality, right? You get this reality where currency is the way, money for us is currency because we need it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be a time where it may not be the paper, green, or the digital money, whatever. It may be something else that becomes currency for us. Well, in the society, currency, the American dream, which is an economic reality, that economy, that economics, that currency, that ability to have and make money is no longer defined by white people who have been in power historically, and it's no longer defined by what we traditionally call currency. Now it's defined by, and it's privatized currency, right? So it might be for some people the pronouns that you use. I need you to identify with my pronouns. Like what? You've hijacked the English language.
Yeah.
You've taken the English language and personalized it. And don't get me wrong, there's slang has happened since the beginning of communication. I've been to many cities. I know I got friends that do, and there's people in different places. They got different slang in the way they say stuff. Ain't nothing wrong with having slang, but when you're forcing people to use your slang term as a normal way to understand culture, this is the first time in history that this is happening. Where like your individual,
Especially when your slang term is tied to something that's genetically objective. You know what I'm
100%,
saying? Like
yeah,
you can't switch a slang term on that.
right, you can't. But again, though, right? Look at the vitriol, right? It's like people will say like that's if you're not an ally, if you say it's almost like it's like murder almost. You're
It's
harming
bigotry.
people.
It's hatred.
It's bigotry,
Yeah.
all of it. And it's like, wow. So if I don't take the slang term that you use to define yourself and call you that, then I'm because again, it's the ideology.
Yeah.
It's the privatized individual. It's the American dream. I'm applying it for myself, and the currency is going to cost you your moral or religious or psychological convictions.
Yeah. Give it to
And
me. I owe
I
it.
deserve it.
It's
I'm
I
entitled
deserve
to
it.
it.
Yep.
I'm entitled to it.
Fund me. Fund me.
Yep. I want it. I deserve it. You pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what GoFundMe ideology is. So it's a great campaign. It is a horrible ideology. And we can't hold on to it. We can't trust that ideology. It is Colossians 2:8, an empty philosophy that rivals Christ. It's based on human tradition and the elemental spirits of the world, not based on Christ. Colossians 2:8. That's the reality. GoFundMe is a wonderful illustration and really to me an explanation of the current cultural climate. It may change, but as of right now, as of June 2nd, 2022, we are the GoFundMe generation, fighting over an individualized application of the American dream that we all think we all deserve. Some of it based on historic oppression and all of it. We feel like we deserve it. There was a time when everyone thought if you work hard, you do this, you'll make it. And now it's like, man, I don't want to do nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the concept of if you want to eat, you got to work. It's
Right.
gone. It's gone.
Right. That whole teach a man to fish, you'll teach him, give a man to fish. Is everybody wants to keep being given fish. They want that John 6 following Jesus for another meal, another miracle. Let me make him king so that we can get more from him. And he was like, nah, I knew it was in the heart of man. Sent them folks.
It makes it even harder for Christians to be lazy. It makes it even harder because the temptation is greater.
100%. 100%. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hanging out with us, man. We appreciate y'all. Don't forget to go to hishypeman.com and get all the goods, man. You got the music, you get a link to the paintings, all of that. Don't forget to hit Strack up. He's ridiculous with the paintbrush. Behind him, what you can see is a real painting that he's doing right now. Send him your photos. He can turn that joint into a wall. All right. So don't forget to hit Strack of that. Go to KurtKennedy.com. You can find all my stuff there, the music, all my social media stuff that I'm doing, stuff that I should be doing. You got my photography there, all of it. You get all of me there. We appreciate you. If you are interested, go to patreon.com/cross-examine. We'd love to have you support what we're doing. And as we do that, if you are watching online, go to YouTube, click the like button. Thank you. We've been getting, we don't really promote it as much as we could, but we thank you for all the people who have been going to YouTube, leaving comments, thanking us for things. We're getting new subscribers. We appreciate that. Thank you so much for doing that. We appreciate it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time, as in the immortal words of Eddie Murphy as Buckwheat on Saturday Night Live. Now it's time to say goodbye to all my Negro friends. So that's it. I'm getting ready to watch the game. Game 1 of the NBA Finals, y'all. We appreciate y'all so much. Pray for us. We'll be praying for y'all. Until next week, I'm Kirk Kennedy.
Yeah.
He's Strapped to Wolverine.
What up?
And we